useful skill
We've been successful.
to
All
change
right.
your mind.
Okay. Well, it's 12:30 and we are live now on Facebook. Excellent. Continuing this week with our discussion of Swedenborg's work, New Jerusalem. And this week I am joined by Reverend Junchol Lee of the Swedenborgian Church in San Francisco. I'm gonna say hi, Junchol.
Hello, this is Junchol.
Great. And he's in front of the beautiful fireplace in the sanctuary. And I think that's going to come up in our discussion. I love that there's a fireplace in the sanctuary of the San Francisco Church as a beautiful symbol of the center of love. It's so important in our worship. So that may come up in our discussion. And we may be joined as well by another discussion partner, but they're not quite here yet. So we will proceed. And those of you joining us on Facebook, we've been taking this chapter by chapter and focusing our discussion around our understanding that this image of the New Jerusalem is the core of our faith, the core of this call to be a new church in the world. And so it's the core of how we organize ourselves as a denomination, as a religious body. But then it's also, of course, the core around how we understand and organize ourselves as individual humans in our own growth and regeneration, that these elements of the church that he outlines in here are central to who we understand ourselves to be and how we operate in the world. And this week we take up the topic of faith and its role in the spiritual life. So, Junchol, this is your first time joining us. Oh, and good. Here's Robin as well. Our Robin Ferryman is with us as well from Urbana. I'm going to admit her into the meeting. And Renee's joining us online. Hi, Renee. So as Robin's logging in, Junchol, I wonder if there's a place in this chapter that you'd like to start, something that stuck out to you as kind of vital to consider and think about, and or something that stuck out as vital to question and wonder about. Do you want to start us off with anything?
Sure. Swedenborg's understanding of faith is somewhat different from how other Christian churches uses the word faith. We need to probably start from there. Faith is a very interesting topic, actually, because this is area that touches what we really do as people who believe in God, or in a way of saying what enables us to be the good person that we want to become. That's the area of faith, not so much as believing in the power of God who can give us everything, or just believing in the power of Jesus' redemption and salvation that could take us to heaven, or also believing in church's power to give us the key to heaven. So Swedenborg takes us into a very deep spiritual meditation even when it comes to the subject.
Yeah, so it's not just about, often we use the word faith to talk about different traditions, that there's the Christian faith or the Muslim faith, and that the faith often in those situations refers to the whole arena of that tradition's understanding and practice. And Swedenborg is sort of inviting us to consider faith as this, that it kind of is contained in some of that, but it's this this deeper essence of kind of what we come to know as true and how that guides us. Would you say that touches that what that Swedenborg's deeper invitation, Junchol, or would you articulate that differently?
Yes, sure. Sure means both actually. That's kind of good leading way, standing. And as Swedenborgians, faith also touches the basis of who we really are as human beings.
Mm.
So I'm just thinking to make it simple and short. Divine love and wisdom explains about the divine and how divine creation of divine is actually instrumental by what we call divine wisdom.
Mm-hmm.
Divine wisdom appears in the spiritual world as the spiritual sun.
Mm-hmm.
Divine wisdom, spiritual sun, is the actualization of divine power in the world that created beings are living. That's the connecting. That's what makes what divine intend to be real.
Mm.
Faith is almost saying to us that way. We may receive good intentions, love, inspirations to be kind and gentle, but without the vehicle to make it real, those things are unreal. Never become the real expressions in the world that we touches others.
Mm-hmm.
So faith is something that enables us to find a way to actualize our inner tender thoughts and kindness in the most proper way that would actually make a real deal to others. That's another way to look at it.
Mm-hmm. That's beautiful. I love the way you articulate that. Robin, I wonder if you would want to jump in with your best way of describing your understanding of what faith is to you or in the church.
I like that it said that faith doesn't become spiritual until it arises out of our love.
Mm-hmm.
And that it is a oneness of caring and faith. So what you care about becomes part of what you love because you do goodness with it. Mm-hmm. And so that almost makes it kind of like an action verb, which makes sense and is interesting at the same time. Because, I've seen so many people that declare their faith and they don't necessarily live a life of goodness. Mm-hmm. They just say the words and that settles it all for them.
Yeah.
And so it is so much more, and like Junchol said, much deeper than that. Mm-hmm. There's much more to it. So I thought that was really interesting.
Yeah. Much of the chapter focuses on that faith is nothing without, and then the translation, this translation, it's caring. Sometimes the translation is charity. And Junchol describes this so well. It's the divine love that is really the source of life. And it's this love that wants to be expressed. And yet it needs a vehicle. And so faith in some ways is the vehicle for how we express divine love. And kind of continuing on the correspondence train, the moon is what, and he it's not mentioned in this chapter, but he mentions it lots of other places, that the moon corresponds to faith, which I think is just so, I don't know if you guys saw the moon the other night, but it was really big and beautiful, and doesn't have its own light source, but becomes lighted because of the sun's rays. And that's just such a great image, I think, for our different faiths, our different traditions, our ways of understanding this source of love. They can be lighted up. They are lit by this love, and they then become vehicles to express love in the world. And yet by themselves, they're kind of empty. They're lifeless. And I'm really continually struck by how much Swedenborg is emphasizing that it's the light of the moon that lets us travel through the night, lets us move in the world. But it's for the purpose of moving in the world. It's for the purpose of living out love and action and caring. That's why we have our faith. The faith is not an end into itself, but a vehicle.
Well, to me, what else strikes me in you saying that is that the sun lights up the moon, and the moon does what it does to serve its purpose for us.
Mm-hmm.
Excuse me, I have a lot of sinuses.
Oh, that's fine.
But when you think about the fact that the sun gives life like that to everything, not just us, but the planets and everything, and because without that, we have no planet. It's a dead planet, which really just emphasizes that whole interconnectivity of all of us, that that we are connected. And I just, when you think about it that way, it just seems hard to ignore that, to be blind to that. And yet a large part of the world is blind to that.
Yeah. Ralph, who's in the chat, was asking about how the moon is lit by faith, and asking if the sun signifies charity. And I think, Robin, you kind of answered that question, that in Swedenborg's estimation, the sun really represents God. It represents the fullness of God's love and wisdom. And that's a pretty good representation, because as Robin pointed out, without the sun, we wouldn't exist. It's the source of all the energy that flows into the natural world. And so the sun is the fullness of love and wisdom and the source of everything. And yet it becomes differentiated in through all of the different beings that then receive that energy and are able to live on this planet. And then the moon offers us its light by reflecting the light of the sun. And I think in some ways, for me, it makes faith, it makes me realize how important faith is, that we need this vehicle, we need this light, and we need it because of the darkness that we experience in the world. The sun's always out there in the universe, right? The sun never actually goes out, but because of the way the earth turns, and in the same way, because of the way that we have been given the freedom to kind of turn away from God, from love, we experience this darkness. We experience fear. We experience separation. We experience so many things as human beings that are huge challenges, and that could be overwhelming challenges if it were not for this experience of faith and this ability to have faith in what we can't see, so that when the darkness comes, we don't think, oh no, we remember, oh no, morning will come again. And it's all that. And so much of faith, so much of the stories of religion are really reminding us of, no, you've been through this before, and it will end, and a new day will dawn. And we need those reminders.
If I may tag into that, there are three interesting things about scientific background of that. One, as you were actually saying, Sage, that moon becomes dark and then small, become full, and become small again, then go darker. That's how our faith goes. It grows, it's never steady. However, the way how moon is going is because its Earth is moving. Earth is carrying the moon around it, and it moves. So that because of that position, certain times moon gets more sunlight, certain times it goes under the shadow of the Earth. We block the moon so that moon cannot fight. So we darken the faith. As we were all saying, sun's always stable. So first is moon goes the cycle, just like our faith goes into the cycle of fully bright to the very dark state. Second point is that happens because we move. And then the third one is kind of, you touched that stage, is that just like moon comes back, we go around, give it time, come back.
And we learn in that process of change. And I might make the argument that as we go through those cycles of facing a darker night, or our faith being kind of challenged or tested, that our faith deepens and possibly grows and evolves. I've been thinking a lot about, and I hope there are no children watching, but I'm thinking a lot about Santa Claus and the Tooth Fairy and some of the things that we like to believe in, or we like to teach our children to believe in, that are like, I struggle. I struggle with the limited nature of those stories, but they can be delightful. They create an experience of delight. And sometimes our faith, and I think for children, sometimes our faith does need to be very simple. We need really simple. God loves you. You're being protected. Like, we need some simple language for faith. But as we grow and as we experience disappointment, and as we realize the limits of perhaps our faith is strong because we actually believe things will always work out a certain way. But as we grow up, we realize, actually, no, there doesn't always work out a certain way. We're sort of forced. Our faith has to kind of go even deeper. And I think that's as it needs to be.
Well, there's this idea of learning to embrace the darkness. And it's going to be a time of rest, like winter, and things underground during the winter, they go through that darkness, but it's necessary. And also the darkness within us. I keep thinking of all these different aspects of what darkness could be. And then the darkness within us, because we all have a darkness, and there could be a time to be reflective and to maybe learn to embrace that side of us, or to understand that side of us, or maybe even this traumas is a darkness, that we've suppressed or, buried for whatever reasons. There are different ways to look at that darkness and that time that you have to spend there.
Two explanations from Sridham about darkness. One, it's actually a big movie. All the dark things that you think it's yours, it's not you. It's not you. It's not your fault. One, a lot of them are from your ancestors, because that hereditary evil. These are potential things that is just inherited into our system. We feel like that's part of us, because that creates the potential of us as a human being. They're not us. The other side is that there's a dark shadow that is from the hell, influences from hell, that is always taking at least half of our mentality. So these are not us. It's not, even if we listen to it sometimes, we get taken by it, it's not us. And then the second is, however, even if it's a real darkness, it is, very symbolic illustration. It is created. Shadow is created because of us blocking the sun. Now, the position is then, are you going to turn away from the sun and look at the shadow and complain, only shadow, sun? Or are you going to turn it around, face the sun, let the shadow be? But that Sridham gives image of every angel in heaven. I think this is totally symbolic. Physically, it's impossible. The spiritual world is not physical, but they have sun at their forehead all the time at 45 degrees. Meaning they're always facing the sun. They're not looking at their shadow that they're. like lucky. So,
Mhm.
so why does he give it to us? Because I guess there's another big one, a small, I'm pretty sure. There's something called the proprium. Proprium is symbolized by Eve in the story of Genesis. It is a human essential desire to possess, to have one's own, what belongs to me, what's mine. There's this desire. Proprium means not in man's own, in a way that that which is from human being, which is impossible. So it has its own way of saying that this thing doesn't have the real ground in the world of divine, meaning it's an illusion. Human beings create. But it's essential to human beings to feel that way. Otherwise, they don't feel the ownership of it. But God permits it. That's the creation of it.
We
But
talked
then
about
later,
Good.
even angels have property.
Mhm.
But I'll stop there. It's a big topic.
It's an important one, though. We talked about that a bit earlier in our discussion, in terms of the creation of evil, that the harm, the great harm that we're conscious of in our own selves, in terms of stories of harm that we carry, proclivities towards creating harm, all that we call evil, that we understand that really did come into being through humanity, through our ability to turn away from the Son, as you're pointing out, to turn away from God, to turn away from each other, and to believe ourselves to be separate. And that in that was created this tension, this real illusion that is an illusion. And I like you pointing out, Junchol, it's not ours. It's something that comes from our ancestors. It's all around us. It's not ultimately ours. That who we ultimately are is this divine essence that is pure love. So it's not ours, and there's something really powerful about remembering that, and kind of not attaching to those things and believing those things are our identity. And at the same time, these are realities that we must negotiate in our daily life. They're not things, and this is so central to Swedenborg's call, that we're called to be divine love in the world, in the work of being human, in relationships, in making choices, and that's requires a acknowledgement, I think, of the darkness, requires a willingness to work through hard feelings. And it's almost like we look at the Son, and we keep God's love first, and that empowers us to then continue to do the real work of kind of accepting all of the things that are, and transforming them through our faith, through our commitment to the good, through our kind of commitment to believing that ultimately, even though there's so many challenges, ultimately the totality of what creation is, of what God is, of what it even means to be alive, in an ultimate sense, is good, is love, is worth every single challenge and battle. And Barb's bringing up how the darkness, when we think of the natural world and the cycles, darkness is important. It's what allows wintertime darkness. It's what allows for renewal and regeneration. It's partly why we have flowers and life. Like, we wouldn't have life in the way that we have it if these cycles didn't exist. So
Absolutely.
yeah.
Darkness was actually creation of God.
Mm-hmm.
It was not that God's intention wasn't be identified with the darkness.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Darkness was a condition into which we were created,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
with the seed and the hope to grow out of it and pursue and find the spiritual identity
Yeah. Yeah.
by choosing. without it, there is no free will.
Mhm.
So entire Swedenborgian theology is about you have freedom to choose, right? Actually, your own reality. It is not about freedom to choose either latte or Americano kind of choice, or buying electric car or gas car.
Mhm.
So all those things are actually part of materialistic.
Yeah.
So, but we have freedom to choose something higher
Mhm. Mhm.
that makes our own inner reality. So, yes, I believe I completely agree. Darkness is actually is a creation of God. It has very good parts too. When it's dark, we go to sleep, and our spirit get to visit the spiritual world. That
Mhm.
so it is a wonderful design of it, and it's just that we attach darkness to evil too much with the fear.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yes.
Renee
So there's
brings
a
up,
difference between, sorry, darkness and shadow. They're not the same.
they're not necessarily the same. Yeah. Renee brings up too that in the darkness we experience our need for the light or for the Lord, which I think that's also really valid and true, that um, if we're just sort of in the light and all the time and life is good, then we can live with we can be pretty deluded and our
Absolutely.
proprians can kind of go out of control in terms of thinking, I've got this under control and I've got this life thing and I got no problems and I. Whereas when we're faced with challenges, kind of our self-conception gets ripped off or pushed down or thrown out. And that's part of what makes the darkness so hard. But it's also what makes the darkness so powerful and an opportunity for getting
Yes.
closer to that deeper light, that deeper love within that can't be destroyed or tipped over. I feel like sometimes that's partly how this whole universe is like the perfect cauldron for life's development, because all of these cycles create the opportunity for us to grow. And it's true for humans, and it's actually true for trees and plants too, that actually they grow taller and stronger if dealing with obstacles. Things that grow in a greenhouse where everything is sort of perfect end up not being as hardy and as capable of reaching,
Or it's delicious.
or as delicious.
It's true. You lose a lot of flavor in a hot house.
Yeah.
Closing.
I'm thinking about Helen Keller. She wrote a beautiful book, Let Us Have Faith, which she wrote a lot about her Swedenborgian faith in other places, but then in this book, she doesn't associate it to any particular tradition or she's really looking at faith as this light in the dark, this sort of commitment to the good, this commitment to believing that we are here for the good and that goodness will prevail, and she writes this book really kind of trying to rally, I think, more people of different spiritual traditions to consider that element of faith. And I wonder about it. I wonder, and I'm sure I'll explore this in more ways, but I'll be curious what your thoughts are, if there is an element of faith that is kind of universal, that doesn't have to be tied to a particular religious teaching, but that speaks to this commitment to the good. Do you think there's a faith that we could all kind of rally behind, or
Well, I have a thought. It makes me think of the 12-step program. So, these people have hit rock bottom. They are in the deepest depths of darkness that they can experience, and they've surrendered. When you get to that level, you're going to either die or you're going to surrender to God because you've got nothing else. And I've seen so many people, and some of the early tenets that they're told to do is to do service work or charity work or do good work. And they do it, and they're in the depths of darkness. They're not feeling the love, but they're doing it. If they want to get better, they're doing it. And eventually that love comes. More they do it, they do that goodness in the world because they're supposed to. But it's the sort of slogan that says, fake it till you make it. And when they work it long enough, it changes inside. You can see the internal change. They start doing it because they do love it. They discover that they do love it. And then they're doing it because they love it and they love it. So there's this whole transition that happens over time. And a lot of them don't have a religious faith at that time. And that's the next step, to find a power greater than yourself. It doesn't have to be Christian or anything else. Just a power greater than yourself and of your understanding. That's all they need to do. And it works. I've seen this through the years that it really works. And so that goodness and charity and that faith doesn't have to be tied to a particular denomination at all. And it's just, if you can do it, work it, and then just hang in there and open yourself to it, the transition that happens.
Yeah.
It's just amazing.
Yeah.
Swedenborg also wrote another book called Full Doctrine. And in there's an entire book about faith. The first chapter of that book is actually titled as Faith is Internal Acknowledgement of Truth.
Faith is total acknowledgement in what?
Of truth.
Of truth.
So you can go many directions with it, but one thing that could be universal is that for Swedenborg, faith, again, is not a matter of accepting a tradition, agreeing with the dogma, or saying the acts that a particular institution requires. In an essence, faith is your relationship with something that's bigger than you. Yes, Robert, right? Robert. Like a 12-step program, which is deeply inspired by actually Swedenborg.
Yeah.
So let me kind of take this to Taoism and Buddhism, and actually Confucianism, which doesn't have God or faith. Taoism talks about the way of heaven has no kindness. It does what is necessary. Why? Why does it say? Because, Sage, you're talking about it, right? The human civilization, we reached this far, creating this much problem because we have desire to make everything comfortable. We want to erase every single potential problem, any pain. We create so many products to ease out even tiniest pain or problem. Nature doesn't do. Nature's way is maybe suffering is good, maybe suffering is necessary. Long life is not necessarily all the best things. So nature does the way it is necessary for the whole system. It does not favor one particular animal. Like when you watch the Nature Channel, if a little pup is hunted by, the other predator, you curse the predator, but the predator didn't eat for 5 days. It needs to eat, right? There's no side. It is just a system that entire thing works. But we have our own desire to make everything that's favorable to human. And Taoist says that's the cause of all evil. Because that disrupts the nature, that creates imbalance, not just in the nature, but also in human. Because it continues then is that I want everything to be favorable to me, even if it sacrifices my wife, my children's, doesn't matter. It has to be favorable. And Swedenborg calls that selfish.
Yeah.
So faith as internal acknowledgement of truth is bring that light into me and brighten and show me, oh my, I didn't selfish. That's the first thing.
That's
And
so
this
beautiful.
could be universal.
It's so beautiful, Chunchul, the way you articulated that. And it's making me think about, and I'm thinking about that, and I'm thinking about, Robin, you're sharing about the 12 steps, and that they're not prioritizing one particular faith, but the 12 steps and the program of the 12 steps is a particular kind of endeavor and has a lot of structure and a lot of and so in some ways I think it's providing a space for this kind of thing in the similar way to the Swedenborgian Church provides a space, or the Islamic community provides a space. Like there's these different traditions, and I think at their best, they do what you're speaking of, Chunchul. They create a container with enough creative, the Bible is so multi-layered and multivalent that it gives you this place to explore the truth within, and for that truth to grow and to expand. I think at their best, these different traditions and I don't know what you'd call I guess the 12 steps, or it can be a tradition, what we call these different ways of being loving community, really. I mean, at the ideal of all of these, of all of our human endeavors, are kind of to lift up one another and to grow, and maybe these different faiths, they serve that purpose insofar as they support our willingness to experience the truth within and to kind of live from that, and I think they need to be big enough that truth can grow as our life, as we grow. And in terms of the things he's cautioning against in this chapter, I think religious traditions or communities become problematic if there isn't that space, if there isn't that, and there isn't that respect for the knowing within. I remember when I was in seminary, I studied with some Catholics, some Jesuits, and I was so surprised because of some of my preconceived notions about the Catholic Church. I was surprised to learn that within Catholicism, there's a theological tradition of first is your conscience, then is what the priest says, or that first you have to remember and live by your conscience. And I think that teaching probably doesn't always get lifted up. And that's when we see sort of problematic things happening. Anyway, I just share that in terms of thinking about this faith in regard to being an institution of faith. How do we put that inner sense of truth? How do we lift that up and encourage one another to go there, to really think about how are we living? What do we believe to be true, and how are we living? Instead of thinking of church or faith as we're going to just hand you the truth so you can live by what we say. That feels like an important distinction in terms of what the new church is, that the invitation of the new church is about that light within, that holy light, that's deeper than even our selfishness, or it can even shine a light on our selfishness at times.
Yes, once I was describing difference between belief and faith. And this is just my own way of explaining. I have to say this is not what Stephen said. Belief is something in a way that I am trying to make things into my own senses, the meaning that other things has to agree with me. Belief is what I give consent to others to make sense to me. Because belief is from me. I believe. I believe. So if it doesn't make sense to me, I can't believe. So the subject or authority that gives belief is me. Me central. Faith is I am trying to change myself to understand what doesn't make sense to me, but is right.
Mhm.
So I want to change myself because there's right internal acknowledgement of the truth that I saw something that is right and that should work, but I may not like it, may disagree with it, I may not even believe it,
Mhm.
yet I'm willing to do it.
Mhm. Mhm.
To me, that's more faith. So faith has to do with living the way that I perceive to be right.
Mhm.
Belief is more, in a sense, my own agreement to others,
Mhm.
meaning that you have to fit me.
Yeah.
Otherwise, I'll not believe.
Yeah. Mm.
That would be challenging to discern what you think is right if you don't believe it or or you don't agree. That would be a real challenge to discern
Absolutely.
if that's the right thing to do.
Mhm.
I mean, wow.
Yes.
It does feel like faith calls us into uncharted territory. And
Yes.
I think that elicits that for me, what you're sharing, Jinchul. And
Choppy
I'm trying
waters.
to think of an example in my life of like, I think there have been times, certainly times where my faith gives me a sense of commitment to life, to what I'm doing, to being to the people and the kind of the communities that are around me. So faith uh, is present in terms of I'm not going to run away. Like I have faith that I'm here to be of use. But I don't always know what that means, what I'm supposed to do. I don't have like a clear, sometimes faith calls me to question my beliefs or because maybe my belief is that I should have the answer, but actually faith is saying, no, you have to trust God and surrender, like in the 12-step group. So I think the beliefs often change and they or at least they can change as we kind of stay the course of life. And I'm really jiving on this image of like Jinchul's fireplace in the chapel, like the thinking about, and this is so emphasized in the chapter, that caring is the essence of faith, that caring, charity, love, the feeling that's the heart, that's the fire of who we all are. And that's what motivates everything. And part of faith perhaps is to just always remember the fire is there, to never think we've lost that, to kind of trust that the fire is in me and that the fire is in you and everyone else, that to kind of believe that there is this life, this force that we don't fully understand, that all of our beliefs are kind of our ancestors' best descriptions of their journey with this process. And now we're learning from them. And then we're also learning from our current experience. And I think what's so powerful about our tradition in particular is a like, yes, all these stories are so beautiful and let's lift them up and let's learn from them. And let's know there's this much deeper reality within them. Let's not get lost in the story and think that it's dictating how we must live. Because so much of that and wanting to know how we must live is actually a selfish enterprise. It's like, how must I live so I can be safe versus how are we all living together? What is this mystery that we've been born into, and how might we act faithfully as a part of the larger whole?
I was thinking,
go ahead, Robin.
I was thinking about this other aspect to faith, because we're talking about faith in regards to being about caring and goodness and stuff, but I'm thinking about faith in regards to trusting that an event or something's going to come out well. And I'm thinking about my health. So I had a spinal fusion when I was 16 in surgery. And of course, the doctors have to give you the worst case scenario. So the worst case scenario is, number one, the anesthesia will kill you. You could bleed out. You could be paralyzed or operating on your back, all these things. And so you have to go into this with this faith and trust that this is going to come out okay. And so how does the caring and stuff fit into that? Or is that just a different level of faith altogether?
Mhm.
Because, you know, we all take those risks, these challenges where we don't know what the outcome's going to be. And how does caring fit into that? Because then if you're caring about yourself, then does that border on that whole selfishness, self-centeredness
No.
kind of thing?
I have to entirely disagree with you on that one about you should care about yourself.
Okay.
Absolutely. Absolutely. The problem comes when I say I only care about it, or caring about me is the highest priority. So I'll have to feed me completely until I share my food with you, even though you eat for 5 days. Not my problem. Then that's selfish. So what you are actually describing probably is another territory. So I think we use same word, but we cover three different spiritual territories with the same word, faith. The first one was about the faith as the actualization of caring, meaning there's a good intention and it is a vehicle to be actualized. And there is faith as internal acknowledgement of truth, that it is the sign that we accepted the truth within us and let it shine so that we see what's within us. And even though we don't like it, we follow its light for a transformation. The third is actually your relationship with God. That there's also faith component in there too. That's what probably you were saying, Robin, that at the end it's gonna be okay. My wife hates sometimes I say that, honey, it's gonna be okay. I promise. You're saying that again. Yes, honey, but was I wrong?
Mhm.
And we've been living almost 20 years together. In 20 years, she says that I've been always right.
Mhm.
But I'm not like over optimistic or just saying it because of it. I say it because I really feel that it's gonna be okay. How do I know? I don't really know. I just perceive that this is the way that God will lead us, and at the end we will feel it's okay.
Yeah.
And I can't say it'll be in favor of myself or for me, but it's something that I'll like it. But here's the word. I trust that wherever it is God is leading, that's the way I'm supposed to.
Yeah.
So that's the faith as my personal relationship with my, and I have trust that this being always has what is best for me in the intention, even if I don't see it. That way.
Mhm.
There are three different things that talking
Yeah.
the same word.
And they're all connected. I like
They're
the
all
everything's going to be okay, or everything is okay even if it's not okay.
exactly.
That's one I pull out a lot. And maybe like what you're speaking about, Robin, you know, I do think there's a dimension of faith. It is trusting our actions, trusting our best efforts. And we talked about this actually last week, because in the chapter on love, Swedenborg talks about we can only do the best with what we have. We're only expected to love based on what we know. God's not expecting us to act on things we don't know. So it's a willingness to trust the information, trust the people around us. And so much of life is making decisions about how we're going to navigate situations. And part of this journey of faith is to walk the middle path, is to not go on the God has got it all under control, so I don't have to think about it, and I don't have to get any referrals, and I don't have to, or I'm going to figure this out and I'm going to make the right choice, but somehow find a way down the middle where we use our intellectual capacities and our ability to reason, and we look for guidance and wisdom, and then we choose, and then we have faith in our choice, come what may.
Well, actually, you actually mentioned saying, but I think very important thing about journeying with faith. You mentioned about it is actually working through even when we don't know what we are doing or even how we're supposed to. But then you touched about Shilmo says same thing, care, charity. In Jesus's word, love for the neighbor, have love. So there is something that we call purpose. That's something that we shouldn't forget. The method, pathway could change, could be unpredictable. So I'll actually put that into Taoistic illustration. Taoism see water as the very best example of how to be virtuous. Because water resembles in such a way that it flows high to low humility. It does not insist its own form, it's very flexible. And on its way down, it nurtures all living things. Amazing, if you can live like water. Now, if you're a drop of water coming down from cloud on top of the mountain, do you know which way you will go? You have no idea. Even if you landed, now you're flowing. Can you control where to go? No, you can't. You just have to go the way it takes you. But you have to remember one thing. You are flowing down. Where to move? You don't insist on your form. You fit into any situation that is given to you. And three, you give life to all the beings that are you. That's you.
Yeah.
How it happened, you don't have to.
That's beautiful, Junchul. And it's making me feel, or bringing up for me, I think, in my own experience, realizing that as we kind of go along this path, like you just become aware of the more and more how little control you have. You just become more and more aware of how hard it is, and that inclination to control events is really about self-protection and ego and proprium, and that the invitation is, as you say, to be like water, to perhaps have our faith grounded in our purpose, our highest pursuit. This is how I approach life, and that my approach to life is to honor God, the totality of all it is, not just to honor my own self and my own protection. And that when we can do that and hold that as an intention, it's like, we don't know where we'll lead. We don't know where our lives will lead. We don't know who will be called to help or how we'll be, there's a real, I think, a willingness to be in uncertainty, that's really vital to faith. And maybe that's another good reminder with the moon as faith, that this is about walking around in the dark. This is not about, I know what my faith is, and I'm just going to go off. And that's what causes the Crusades. That's what causes religious warfare and violence, is this, I know my way. But
I guess the blessing is that we don't have to do it in utter darkness. There's still that light that's there for us to guide the way.
Yeah. And not all the time, just like one time a month, it's utter darkness. Go ahead.
The book talks about self-induced faith. And also
self-induced faith.
Yeah, faith alone.
Okay.
Faith alone is another topic that Swedenborg talks about in entire volume, especially in Arcana Celestia. It's a big topic. And first, the symbolic figure of that is Cain, killed Abel. And then in the time of King David, there's a country called Philistia and Philistines. And don't know it's symbolically connecting, but they're still having a word. So, country that symbolizes Philistia, and then the camp of Israel. Correspondentially, there is almost eternal struggle between faith alone and faith united with charity.
Yeah. Central to his Swedenborg's whole reason for being was to fight against that idea that faith alone could save. Really all of it is it's useful to the degree that it creates space for charity, that it creates space for love, that it empowers us to love. And it's partly why it makes it so challenging to be a religious leader in this time of history, because we can talk about having faith in it all turning out, and we can talk about, and yet clearly, and there's still a lot of violence in the world. There's still a lot of ways in which religion has not played a role in helping us to create this freedom. I struggle with, I mean, this is part of my struggle right now is how to live that for myself, and then how to teach that, or how to encourage this in others, you know, is it how to help people see the tradition and the teaching and the Bible and the liturgy and the structure of faith as not the end of the story, you know, as a sort of a doorway to this deeper experience, this deeper lived experience. And I mean, I think more and more humans are seeing that and waking up to that. And yeah, I guess I have to be like water. There's not one answer to that question.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Well, we're just about at our hour with 3 more minutes. So, any closing thoughts about faith that we didn't touch on, or that you guys want to emphasize before we log out?
I would like to ask Junshul, what book, Swedenborgian book, would I find those levels of faith in? Because I find that really intriguing, those 3 different levels you were talking about, more in depth.
Those are my summary.
They were great.
Well, maybe you'll have to write that book for us, Junshul.
Yes. Or an article or something.
Mm-hmm.
I'll
think about that. Yeah.
So yeah, but last comment is that faith is, as a relationship with God, is something that grows. There's a book called Fear and Trembling, one of my favorite books, written by Kierkegaard.
Kierkegaard, yeah.
Yeah. And there he describes this one story. Abraham was called by God to sacrifice his own son Isaac. And then he gives interpretation over and over again, what might have been, what could have been, what would have been going through Abraham's mind. Yet he shows no sign of struggle and follow the order till to the last minute. Now the struggle is, how could a loving father, if it's a loving father who follows that, then he doesn't love son like him, or if he's resisting it fully, then he doesn't believe it. So there's a component of our faith that really asks us to give up what is of this world and accept what is of the spiritual world that is not really visible here.
Mm-hmm.
And there is the continued struggle in that spiral of growth.
Mm.
People may or may not understand.
Yeah. Well, and maybe I would add to that, there's this call to live for this higher purpose, to kind of believe it's all for something good, and then to take those beliefs into our actions and our lived charitable, loving actions. And then through that, living it out, it's sort of like, it's an experiment. I think more and more that life is just ongoing experiments. Just like how'd that go, and being willing to see how this higher faith is playing out, and what's been useful and what isn't, and then not to then let our experiences in the world take our faith away, but it refines perhaps the essence of that faith, and yeah, it goes deeper and deeper. Do you have a last comment, Robin?
I just want to share with Junchul and you as well that during my surgery, I also somehow, somewhere had this knowing that everything was going to be okay.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know where it came from, but I knew deep down it was going to be okay.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
From Swedenborg, that's your guardian spirit.
Say that again, Junchul.
From Swedenborg's perspective, that's your guardian angel whispering to you.
Yeah.
You do have two guardian angels, according.
Yeah. So luckily we have more support than just our own selves in having our faith and caring for our faith. Yeah. This has been really lovely. Thank you, Junchul. Thank you, Robin. And thank you everyone joining us online. Ralph, Barb, Renee. Please come back. We'll be back at noon next week. But we'll have Junchul again back in a few weeks. And I really appreciate your time today. All right. Take care, everyone.
You too.
Okay.
Bye-bye.